Gentlemen, now for those of you that watch my channel on a regular basis, you may notice that there's a bit of salt and pepper in my beard. Who are we kidding? It's mostly salt. In fact, it's more like snow. Which means that, yes, I'm an older man. I'm a man in my 50s, which a lot of people would see as kind of negative. However, there are a lot of pros to being in your 50s, and that's what we're going to talk about today. 5 pros for being in your 50s today on Big Pretty Man. Hi, and welcome back to Big Pretty Man, a channel for the extra-large man who wants to live his life large and in charge. I'm your host, Timothy Big Pretty Crowe. I'm a wardrobe and lifestyle consultant for the extra-large man. You know, guys, as I stand here, I think about how I am now a little over half a century old. I'm 51. And I also often contemplate that I live, because of my age, in a very interesting time. Very similar to people who lived in the 1890s, who went from horses and buggies, which people have been using for 1,000 years, to within their lifetime seeing airplanes and cars and radio and even television. I'm sort of in that same age, I come into an age that would be almost undreamed of for someone in their 20s or even in their early 30s. And I remember I grew up in a time when there was no such thing as cell phones and smartphones have been like something from out of science fiction. If I wanted to listen to music, I had to get a cassette tape or even a record. And if I wanted to see a movie, I could actually remember before VCRs, let alone the streamed movies online. If you wanted to see a movie, you went and saw it in the theater, and if you wanted to see it again, you either went back to the theater or you waited for it to come back out on television. And not even HBO. We're talking about regular network television. There was no such thing as Wikipedia. If you wanted to look something up, you actually had to go to the library and use an encyclopedia. It is a world that would be inconceivable to young people today, like my 2 sons or people of their age who grew up in this completely different mass media, social media world through computers and smartphones. But as I look at I look at myself in my 50s and I think back and I really look at the way things are for me today, I do recognize that there are cons to being 50. For instance, no matter how much you work out and how much you keep yourself in shape in your 50s, your equipment's starting to get a little rusty. It's just unavoidable. You have to deal with the back pains and the knee pains and the joints popping. You tire out a little easier, than you did when you were younger. And you have to deal with things like having to get up and go pee about 2 or 3 times a night. And I remember the wonderful times in my 20s where I would sleep all night and get up and pee like a racehorse. Not anymore. There's a couple of trips to the bathroom in the middle of the night. That's just part of the age, and we won't even get into the sexual stuff. I mean, you can still perform, but that performance is going to be, there ain't going to be no encores, or at least none quick. That's all I'm going to say. You guys out there 50, you know what I'm talking about. And now I'm talking about even if you're in the best of shape, and if you're not, that'll fix all the rest of that stuff. However, there are a lot of pros I've found to being in my 50s that people, I don't think a lot of people are aware. So let's talk about 5 of those that I see as pros of being 50 in your 50s. First, I would say probably number 1 that would separate you from people younger is that it is stability and maturity. And when you're in your 20s, let's start with 20s. When you're in your 20s, you're still trying to figure out who you are, where you stand in things. You're also usually getting your college education, or you're starting some sort, trying to get into some sort of career, at least figure out what you want to do. So you're going through that. In your 30s, that is the time traditionally of starting the family, getting the career, getting the home. It's the establishment time period of your life. Yeah, in your 40s, actually I've said that the 40s thus far, I'm just getting started in the 50s, 40s thus far have been my favorite decade. Because, by that time, you know who you are and you're a little more established. But in your 40s, you are actually starting to face the fact that you're getting old. Your mortality starts to creep in on you. By that time, you're fairly well, you're fairly well established, or at least getting there. Usually this is a time of raising your children. By that time, no matter when you started, they're likely you're dealing with teenagers. But now when you reach your 50s, there's a lot of more freedoms to it. Number one, like I said, you've established some stability, or most of us have, But by your 50s, you're into your job, whatever you're going to do. You're into your career. You're pretty well established by then, or at least you should be. You've usually got the home, or at least that home situation straightened out. You know what you're doing. Or as family, you may either be married or divorced, but you know where you are in life. And with children, usually in our 50s, especially if we started in our 30s, our kids are now off to college or they're off to jobs and they're out of the house. So you're back to kind of a little bit more freedom, but at the same time, you're more mature. You've got 50 years worth of life experience under your belt. You've dealt with a lot of different situations, whether it be social, it be romantic, it be vocational. You've got some experience under your belt, and a little bit of wisdom, hopefully. Now, all these categories, of course, are relative. There's a lot of people that they're not going strictly by this stages in life, as I say. Some people don't get established until much later in life. Some people struggle. But still, the maturity, and that's true. Most people, there are a lot of people in their 50s that are not mature. I know people in their 70s that are not as mature as people I know in their 20s. I think we all know people like that. But by and large, on average, in your 50s, you're pretty well established. You know who you are. You know both good or bad. You know where you stand in life. You know where you're heading in life. You're stable, and and as far as maturity, you've got enough experience under your belt that you're now a mature person. You're not a naive 20-year-old. You're not somebody in their struggling in their 30s, trying to figure out older age in their 40s. You're 50. You pretty much got a line on things, or at least you think you do. I actually personally believe that all of ages is just a stage by stage of naivety. We look back on our 20s and think, how naive, when we're in our 30s. We look back in our 40s and we think in our 30s, how naive. I'm sure in my 50s and we'll look back on my 40s and be, how naive. When I'm 60, probably the same thing about 50. I think that's just life, which tells you it's a learning experience as we go. And people learn at different rates. But still, I think the age of 50, you're at least mature, and you know that that you don't know everything, and that there's still a lot to learn, and you're mature about it. Okay, I'd say number 2 on my list would be 50 is no longer considered old. People, you often hear the term, 50 is the new 40. Well, actually, if you're going by the life expectancies and the history of life expectancy, it's actually more like the new 35. Because, better nutrition and better exercise and better medical care that has evolved over the last 100 years has really affected life expectancy. For instance, if you go back 100 years to 1921, the life expectancy was 60 for men. Actually, 58 to 60. So that would mean that middle age would have been like 30. Yeah. So so therefore, when you would hit 50 in 1921, you were in your elder years. You were in your last decade. It was kind of equivalent to 65 or 70 today. Where and even when I was born, let's go back 51 years ago to 1969. When I was born, the life expectancy was about 65. So, or actually about 66. So that once again means that, when you were in your mid 30s, you were in middle age, and and still, your 50s, you were still considered an older person. You're getting into more elderly years, or about to start your elderly years. 40 was seen as more of the middle age, but in truth, it actually was a little younger. Now, here today, the life expectancy in 2020 and 2021 is about 78 for men, so 78 to 80. So 40 really is middle age. But, going by the old standard, of what we considered middle-aged, it would be, it's more equivalent to being about 35 from the way it was before. It's really not so much the new 40s like the new 35. So the point is that 50 is no longer seen as elderly as it was for a long time. When people were dying in their 60s, you're 50, you're in your elderly years. It's not true anymore. 50-year-olds are no longer considered, well, you're done. No, you're kind of in this gray area between middle age and senior age, which I think is kind of nice. You've still got hopefully another 30 to 40 years of life to go. You're not really middle-aged. You're not young. You're not middle-aged. You're not old. You're in this nice gray area in between, which used to be the 40s back in the day. So, men in their 50s are living much more active lives, much more socially active lives, sexually active lives. When you see someone 50, and well, unless you're a teenager, when you're a teenager, anybody over 30 looks old. But to everyone else, 50 now is not really considered that old. It's a really nice age. It's a good time to be alive, and still you've got another half life to live. So that's good. We 50-year-olds, we're getting old. We're older, but we're not old. That's probably a good one. 40s, middle age. 50s, older. Getting into 60s, now you're old, or you're getting to be old. And I would say that and number 3, and this one is my favorite. It actually kind of leads into 4 and 5 for me, and that is less peer pressure. And maybe not even so much less peer pressure, but by the time you're in 50s, because you are stable, because you are mature, you just don't give a damn what other people think. Not on that level where it affects your life. We are all, as I've said in another video, we are all concerned how people look at us and how people view us. But at the same time, we're not really seeking, a group approval. We're very fine with, being a little bit, going by the beat of our own drum, running at our own speed. And actually what's beautiful is peer pressure really kind of falls off, because no one is really expecting a 50-year-old to be keeping up with things. I mean, when you're a younger man, let's go to high school and even college, there's a lot of peer pressure from friends. You want to keep up. Your social life is everything. And you got to keep up with everything that's going on, from music to clothes to all of this stuff. And you got to keep that image up. You got to keep up with the Joneses, or at least with the other kids, or you're really going to be ostracized on a lot of levels. But when you're in your 50s, nobody's really expecting that from you. You're not of that age to be in that running, where you have to be cool, and you have to be chic, and and you have to be on top of every little thing. Nobody expects that of you in your 50s. You're not running in that type of lane anymore. And actually, if you are, you probably shouldn't be. I think personally, I find when you're trying to keep up with younger people, it's a little pathetic and a little immature. I'm sorry, I really think that. You need to accept your age. Which kind of leads into two of the other 4 and 5. because like number 4 is that you don't have to keep up with fads anymore. You don't have to follow what everybody is wearing, the new thing coming out. The skinny suits and the tight pants and the crazy new hairdos, shaved at the side pompadour things. Nobody's expecting you to do all that. You're 50. Nobody's expecting you to walk up into the club, and if you 50 up in the club, you got a problem. You should be more bar and tavern and restaurant, not up dancing up in the club. As Chris Rock says, you don't want to be that old dude up in the club. Not really old, just a little too old to be up in the club. Don't be that guy. So when it's like that, you want to not look completely out of fashion, but at the same time, all of that pressure of going through every fad that comes along. That's over with. You can now experiment, dress more the way you want to. You are like when you're in your 50s, it's now looks better for you to go with more of the classic menswear look than to be trying to go with the younger look with the cut up jeans and the skin tight pants and all of that. That is all past. You will actually look more in fashion and in style if you go with the classic menswear. And it looks more age appropriate. It really does. You don't have to worry about, getting all these tennis shoes or sneakers, whatever you want to call them, and worrying about, creasing your sneakers. I still don't get that one. I mean, creasing your sneakers. Note that even well-dressed men, you ever heard a well-dressed man talk about how not to crease his dress shoes, his $500 to $2,000 dress shoes? But yet they worry about creasing a sneaker. Sneakers are made to be, they're athletic shoes. They're made to be creased. I don't get it. And guess what? I'm 50. I don't have to get it. And I love that. I don't have to get that. And that kind of goes also for my last one, and that is, this one thought I'd try to avoid, but now I'm actually finding it quite liberating, is that you don't have to keep up with contemporary music. You really don't. Now, when you're younger, this is a big one, especially when you're a teenager or in your 20s, maybe even into your 30s. You got to keep up with music. You got to keep up with the times. Whether it be hip hop or rap or synth pop, whatever's out at the time, you're really supposed to be keeping up with all this and all these artists and who sings what. Because if you're in a social situation in those ages and you don't know who somebody is, you're dead. That was just part of life. Pardon me. But and you're expected to keep up with all those things. You've got to be able to run with your boys and know every song and every dance and all of this. But when you're in your 50s, once again, you don't give a damn about that peer pressure, not on that level. And you pretty much listen to what you want to listen, and you can even look and say, I think that's crap. I hate that. I'm not listening to that. Much more easier than you could when you were younger. Now, a lot of people do when they're younger, reject, say, I don't like a certain type of music, and it's a little more acceptable today with such a wide variety of music available through streaming. So much more access to every type of music on earth. But when I grew up, you had to be up on music, and only that, a certain type of music, no matter where you were. If you were in the South, you had to know country. And maybe some rock, but mostly country. If you didn't know country, you were dead. Everywhere else you had to be up with all the most up to date bands and the hair bands, and all of that. And you had to stay in that lane, or you could get a lot of ridicule and rejection. Until you're 50, nobody's expecting you to be cool anymore. Nobody's expecting you to keep up with everything. Nobody cares. That's not even, they don't expect that from you. So it's very liberating. You can listen to whatever you want without any expectation. No one will be like, oh, you listen to that? They're not going to say that to you in your 50s. In fact, so therefore, and also, I don't know what it is, but it seems like when you get older, music kind of goes off and leaves you eventually. Eventually, you reach an age. You may hang on for a while where you're up with it, but finally, it starts to become noise. And that is a part of that maturity in getting older. I think that music just proceeds on, and eventually we get left behind. And you know what? A lot of people would be kind of bothered by that. I'm not at all. I love it. I love it. I listen. In fact, here is a picture that I found online of the top artists of 2020. And looking at this picture, I do not know who half of these people are. And the other half that I do know who they are, I only know them through the media. I couldn't tell you one song they sing. And you know what? I don't care. And I'm allowed to not care now. Nobody expects me to. I'm an older dude. So and I don't have to listen to them to keep up socially with people. I listen to what I want. I listen to mostly, like a lot of people do, we listen to the music of our youth. As I've said before, I listen to a lot of 80s music, Duran Duran, Flock of Seagulls, Level 42, Cyndi Lauper, Lionel Richie, a music of that era, or the music of the 90s. I'm a big Soundgarden fan, and I loved STP and Pearl Jam, and Kurt Cobain was a god. May he rest in peace. But I also listen to things like a lot of blues. I listen to a lot, even bluegrass music. I would have been crucified for listening to when I was a teenager. I like it. I listen to it when I'm in the mood. I got to be kind of in the mood for that one. I am from Kentucky, so that's part of my heritage. So I can always fall back on that. I'm listening to my heritage, but I actually do like some of it. I listen to classical, and yes, and I'm a big fan of actually Irish folk and Celtic songs. In fact, just yesterday I went to a concert for the High Kings, an Irish folk band. Now, you think that somebody in their teens or 20s are going to find that cool? Not at all. Think this 50-year-old man gives a damn? Not at all. And I love that. And now a lot of people still want to try to keep up with music, and that's fine. I think it is kind of good to know a little bit of the modern music. Even if you don't like it, at least know who people are so you know current events. But I'm sorry, if you are in your 50s going to see Ariana Grande, then you might not need to reassess your age in your life. Now, me personally, I cannot tell you one song sang by this little elf. She looks like an elf. So, to me, those are the better things of being in your 50s. Okay, guys. Well, that's all I've got for this video. If I'd love to hear if you're a person who is older, I'd love to hear what you think are some of the pros of being in your 50s, or even in your 40s. Tell me what in your life journey, what you're seeing as pros at your stage in life. You can, as usual, you can reach me through comments below, or you can reach me through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, or you can email me. I always love to hear from my followers and my subscribers. So you know what? Enjoy your life at whatever age that you're at. If you're in your 30s, enjoy it. If you're in your 40s, enjoy it. If you're in your 50s, really enjoy it, because life is a journey, and enjoy all of the gifts that are left by the road of that journey, because eventually that journey is going to end. Make sure that you made the most of the road that you've traveled, and throughout that entire road, you always remember one thing: stay pretty.